If you flattened every continent, mountain, and island on Earth and dumped it all into the ocean, the planet would still be completely covered by almost 2 miles of water. That is how unbelievably deep our oceans really are. So today, we are going down, step by step, into the deepest parts of Earth. We begin at just 40 meters below the surface. This is the maximum safe depth for most scuba divers. Sunlight still shines here. Fish swim around coral reefs. It feels familiar, but not for long. At 93 meters, we reach the wreck of the Lusitania. The ship was so massive that if it stood upright, part of it would still stick out above the water. And it gets stranger. At 214 meters, free diver Herbert Nitsch reached this depth on a single breath. No oxygen tank, just one breath of air. Then at 332 meters, Ahmed Gabba set the scuba diving world record. But that is nothing compared to what comes next. At 500 meters, blue whales disappear into the darkness. Nuclear submarines operate around this depth too. A little deeper, emperor penguins can dive to 535 meters. The pressure here feels like a polar bear balancing on a single coin. At 830 meters, you are now deeper than the Burj Khalifa is tall. And then we hit 1000 meters. No sunlight has ever reached below this point. Everything beneath us is permanent darkness. The pressure is so intense it would feel similar to standing on the surface of Venus. And yet somehow life still exists here. Leatherback sea turtles dive to 1280 meters. At 2000 meters, terrifying creatures like the black dragonfish hide in the darkness, nearly invisible unless light touches them. At 2250 meters, sperm whales battle colossal squids. These monsters can grow 14 meters long with razor-sharp hooks lining their tentacles. Then at 3,800 meters, the Titanic appears, resting silently in freezing darkness. At 4,000 meters begins the abyssal zone. Anglerfish, fangtooths, and viperfish drift through black water that feels more alien than Earth. The average ocean floor sits at 4,267 meters deep. But we are still nowhere near the bottom. At 6,000 meters, the Hadal zone begins, named after Hades, the underworld. At this point no human has ever survived unprotected. The pressure here is over 1,000 times greater than at sea level. It could crush a human instantly. And yet somehow life still exists here. At 8,848 meters, you are now deeper underwater than Mount Everest is tall. In 2012, James Cameron descended nearly 10,900 meters into the abyss. But the deepest human dive ever happened back in 1960, when Don Walsh and Jacques Piccard descended 10,916 meters in the Trieste submarine. It took them 5 hours to reach the bottom. They stayed only 20 minutes before leaving after a window cracked. Finally, at 10,994 meters, we reach Challenger Deep, the deepest known point on Earth. A place so deep that if you placed a commercial airplane inside it, the ocean would still close over the top. And the craziest part, scientists believe we have only mapped around 5% of